In a time where every single video on Tears of the Kingdom seems to be news, when it's usually not necessarily actual news, I figured it'd be a good time to go a different route and to speak on some features that we can all hopefully look forward to seeing. Although I think most of what I'm going to mention will end up in Zelda's newest installment, some of these might be a bit out of reach. So with that being said, these are my top 5 features that I hope to see in Tears of the Kingdom. I'm guessing this doesn't surprise any of you, as one of Breath of the Wild's biggest criticisms by far is for the lack of enemy variety. With all the new trailers and gameplays of recent, we're finally starting to see that Tears of the Kingdom will most definitely have a surplus amount of new enemies. In addition to just new variations of returning enemies, we're also going to be seeing completely original ones with the constructs and the boss bokoblins, so it's safe to say there'll be plenty of other new enemies along with returning classics such as the Kargaroks and Redeads. However, because this is a wish list, what I really want to see is the return of the Dark Nuts and Iron Knuckles. Most enemies in Breath of the Wild barely had any defense besides their surplus amount of health, so it'd be great to see the return of a more defense-oriented type who could either be fought as a type of mini-boss, or maybe leading a pack of lesser enemies like the boss bokoblin. Regardless, I think they'd be a welcomed return to the franchise, and I think it's very possible we could see them. Besides just the Dark Nuts and Iron Knuckles, I would also welcome the return of Scatolas and other more theme-based enemies, which I'll speak on more for number 4. In a previous video I made, I spoke a bit about how Breath of the Wild needed more engaging side missions. A lot of these consist of just running some errands for someone only to receive a fairly lackluster reward. While I think that's okay on occasion to build immersion, I don't think they should be the bulk of the side missions. In a clip from the newest trailer, we see Link escorting a group on a carriage, which to me indicates that there could be a lot more in-depth interaction with other characters, and in turn, could mean more impactful side missions. I'm hoping that the side missions in Tears of the Kingdom could involve greater rewards such as a unique weapon or a new armor set. There's a lot that could be done to incentivize completing these side missions. I'd like to see them be more in-depth, and something that I love about the Zelda franchise is how immersive the games are between the enemies, environments, ambiance, and soundtracks. Breath of the Wild was severely missing some of these themed enemies that I'd love to see return, and I believe a side mission could be the perfect opportunity to see some of these. If you went to the Rock Woods in Breath of the Wild, then you know there's a lot of Forest Octoroks there for no apparent reason. Even though I didn't get anything from defeating all of them, it was a very unique experience that was unexpected, and I wish I saw more of it. Off the top of my head, a side mission could be that the Gorons task you with finding a hostile cave of Dodongos who've been problematic. Even if Dodongos aren't found anywhere else in the game, and only during this side mission, I think missions like this could open the door for lots of opportunity, but only time will tell. Water Blight, Fire Blight, Thunder Blight, Wind Blight. I can't believe I have this at number 3, but I want to see the return of theme bosses, and I'm not just talking about elemental changes like the Stone Talus. I'm talking about large, weird, scary looking creatures that seemingly belong to the theme of their environment. Even though this is a super easy boss, it's wild that Diababa was the first dungeon boss of Twilight Princess, or even that Goma was the first of Ocarina of Time. Design and build-up can make a big difference in boss fights, and none of the Blight Ganons really did it for me. This is more of a design issue for me rather than gameplay, as I still thought they could be challenging and I had a good time with them. However, they're just not near as memorable as many of the bosses from its predecessors. This seems to be almost a sure thing for Tears of the Kingdom judging from the trailers, and will more than likely also see additional overworld bosses such as the Flame Gleeok. You have construct bosses in the sky, Gleeoks and others on the overworld, so I'm guessing there'll be plenty of theme bosses in the underground as well. I'm curious to see how Tears of the Kingdom might be able to re-implement themed dungeons back into the mix. The gameplay of the Zelda franchise is forever changed. It's no longer the dungeon, overworld dungeon formula. It's now vast, and you can do almost anything at any time. Now, this doesn't mean that themed dungeons can't also be a part of the game though. We saw that Nintendo's aware of the demand for dungeons, considering they still had the Divine Beast in Breath of the Wild. So I assume they're aware of the even higher demand for dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom. Personally, even though though I appreciate the complete freedom of the overworld, I would not be upset if certain temples were blocked off until you acquired an item or whatever that might be. In my personal opinion, I think we'll probably see a dungeon for every tier, just like in Ocarina of Time you had the 7 sages, and I assume a lot of these will be theme based unless they're all truly just more shrine types, which I do not see happening. I'd welcome the return of a forest temple, which is always a favorite for me, but let me know in the comments below what your favorite dungeon theme is. I'm sure there could be some obscure themed ones thrown in there, but if dungeons is number 2 for me, then what could possibly be number 1? King Bulblin, Zant, and Girahim were all new villains to the franchise. I'm as excited as the next person for the return of Ganondorf, but prior to Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess both had their own original villains. I was a kid playing Twilight Princess, and nothing was more intimidating than Zant. I assumed he was the big bad of the game until you learned about halfway through that that's just not the case. Unfortunately for Zant, they decided to take away the intimidation by portraying him as insane right at the end of the game. My number 1 thing that I'd love to see in Tears of the Kingdom is a new original villain. This is probably the least likely feature that I've mentioned, but the franchise does a great job with its villains. I imagine the only way this could be done is if Ganondorf had a loyalist help him break free. And no, I don't want it to be the leader of the Yiga clan, that guy was just kind of goofy. I think it'd be great to have someone more intimidating such as a Zant or Girahim. But something I imagine to be even more frightening could be Dark Link. Although unlikely, I imagine Dark Link tracking you around the world of Hyrule, where you have a handful of encounters with him. That'd be frightening, challenging, and very intense. However, I imagine he would lack the personality that characters such as Zant and Girahim brought. Out of everything I want to see in Tears of the Kingdom, there's nothing I want more than the addition of a new original villain that could eventually become a staple to the franchise. I'd be happy with even just one thing from this list, although I do think we'll be seeing most of what I mentioned at least in some way, shape, or form. Tears of the Kingdom is releasing in the coming days, which is why I wanted to create this final wish list before we're all able to play it ourselves. So, let me know what you would like to see most in Tears of the Kingdom, as well as what you might not care to see. If you have any suggestions for me, then please drop a comment, as I'm sure I'll make a video on the released Tears of the Kingdom. So, until next time.